Hi everyone, and welcome again to the third installment in the introduction to video. You might notice that I'm outside today. Yeah, I've decided that I'm going to take this, I guess you could say, on the road. I'm actually just kind of across the street from my house, and I thought that this would be a nice change of pace for us as we talk about video one more time. So, just to recap, first off, I want to thank you. Thank you for all the engagement that I've gotten. This has been more engagement than I thought that I would get. I've gotten more emails, more comments, etc. about this series, and so I just want to thank you. Now, remember, what we're trying to do here is we are trying to engage. We're trying to get your message out to more and more people. And so that's exactly the point of what we're trying to do. We're trying to just draw people in and connect with them in a way that traditional media really can't, and in a way that up until recently almost no one could, and that is with video. Video that's distributed online or person to person via email, on YouTube, on Vimeo. There's just a ton of ways to distribute video, and I would love you to be able to get your message out using video, connecting with people of all sorts of ages, and just really connecting with them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we do that, I think I'm going to go inside because it's just a little more noisy than I'd like, and we'll talk about more of the things that I want to teach you today in just a second. Okay, that's a little bit better. Welcome back to my home studio. This is where I normally shoot the churchtechcast.com shows, and so I thought that I'd be a little more comfortable, and I have a few props here that I'm using kind of just to make this easier. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to talk about some hacks that will make it easier for you to do video. So first off, I want to tell you about something that you may not have considered, and that is quarter 20. Quarter 20 is just a regular bolt that you, in the US at least, where we still use the imperial system, this is a 1/4 inch bolt with a 20 thread count. I think that's what it is per inch. So the 1/4 20 bolt is exactly what's on the bottom of most cameras. So this is my DSLR, my Canon T3i, and you'll notice that it has a hole right there, and you can just take any 1/4 20 bolt and put it in there. Now, you might be thinking, what good does this do me? Well, it does one very important thing, and that is you can mount a camera just about anywhere, and you don't necessarily need a tripod, because here's a little bitty tripod. Itty bitty, isn't it cute? This is the same thing as this. So this has some advantages in that it's got a mini ball head, so I can swivel it around and do some things like that just to make it easier to deal with. But with a little ingenuity and just a regular bolt, you can mount your camera just about anywhere that you want. And the reason that we do this is stability matters. Stability makes it easy to get a really good shot without causing problems. So you really want to use a tripod or something to stabilize your camera whenever you're using it. Now, on television, there's kind of some handheld work and everything like that, but those are professionals that are using very large cameras so they don't shake. You might notice that your shots probably shake more than you would like. So that's tip number one, is use the 1/4 20 bolt. Now, you might be thinking, well, Paul, all I've got is a camera phone. How do you mount one when it doesn't have that thread on it? I got a solution for you. This is called a binder clip. This is a particularly large one, as you can see, but what you can do is you can remove these things just by squeezing them. So you can make a cell phone mount here. I've taken my daughter's cell phone because she wasn't doing her chores. You can take a cell phone. She's already cracked the screen. It's a little sad. You can take a cell phone and put it in there. Just make sure that you've got an adequate amount of space here. And if before you do this, you drill a hole smack dab in the center and you take your 1/4-20 nut and stick that on the inside, then you've got a mounting point to mount either a tripod or your 1/4-20 bolt. And you can do that, and for basically free, just $1 or $2, you can make that into a holder. Now there are other ways of doing that. There are other holders that work better than that, but if your budget is particularly low, then that's something that I would recommend for you to do. I mentioned this in a previous video, but if you are recording sound on your smartphone, you might notice that what came with your smartphone probably was a headset with an inline microphone. If you don't use that very often, or if you want to get another one, I know that the Apple branded ones, which are white, which might be a little bright on camera. I've seen people color them with a Sharpie marker or something like that. You can snip off the earbud and then use a safety pin to pin that in place, and then you can get very usable sound. So that's something else that I thought that I'd suggest, is how to make a cheap lavalier for your videos is just using that mic. Now, if you don't want to snip that off, you can just hide the cords in your clothing, and again, just pin it to the outside using a small safety pin, and that'll work fine. Now, if you're using a webcam, what you want to do is you want to avoid the "I'm looking down on you" shot. Here, let me try and simulate that. You want to avoid this shot. You see how that's not so much good looking? Okay, so let me get back to my regular shot here. Okay, so you want to avoid that shot. And the way to avoid that is to raise the webcam even with your eyes. Maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, but within an inch or so. A little higher will eliminate any double chin issue that you may have, unless you've got a large double chin, then we can't do too much. A little lower will give you just a hair more authority. I tend to think a little lower, but that's just because I've been exercising and I don't have a double chin. So you do need to keep that in mind as you're placing it. But on par with your eyes, a little higher, a little lower is much better than on your lap where you're looking down on it. So you can get much better video that way. Now, if some part of your shot is particularly dim and you just need to reflect a little light in there, I've got a cheap solution for you as well. See this? This is one of those fan fold kind of automotive windshield things that you can pick up at any auto store, or sometimes large stores like Walmart have them as well. That's where I got this one. And you can use that to reflect light where you need to reflect it. So that's another little tip for how to make light better. And remember, all these hacks are going to be located in the ebook that's connected to this video. So make sure that you have signed up at trinitydigitalmedia.com/vidcourse if you haven't already done so, and then I'll just send you the ebook that goes with this course as well. So let me go to my next slide in this presentation. So let's talk about the next thing that you need to do, which is how to get the most out of your smartphone video. Now, I've got to tell you something. You may not have known, but this entire video is being shot on my iPhone. And my iPhone isn't the latest version. In fact, I'm a little ashamed of the fact that it's like a 3-year-old iPhone, but it shoots perfectly adequate video, depending on what you're doing. So we're going to talk about some of the things that I'm doing to get the best video I can, given that I'm only shooting with my iPhone. So the first thing is stabilize your iPhone. I mentioned that in the hacks section, that stabilizing really matters. I am not using the binder clip trick. There are actually third-party phone holders that you can get off of Amazon and some other places that hold your phone steady, and it doesn't really matter what brand of phone you have. You can get a lot of different models that will add in this 1/4-20 screw for you. I've got a larger version, but still a mini tripod in front of me, holding the video in place, the iPhone in place, so that I get a good, solid shot. Now, it might be a little distracting to you because it might not look like I'm looking right in the camera, and I'm sorry about that. I'm used to looking at my face on the screen behind me. That's what I do 5 days a week, and I'm having to actually consciously think to look into the camera, which is not in the center of the shot. See how it looks like I'm looking off to the side? That's the camera. That's the screen. The camera is actually over here, so I have to actually think about looking at the camera in order to look right into your eyes. So, and I can't tell that I'm doing that as I'm doing it. So another thing that you can do that's very helpful is, right now I'm using the front-facing camera. The downside of that is the front-facing camera tends not to be as high resolution as the back-facing camera. But the back-facing camera is where, while it's higher resolution, in order to use it, you would have to turn the screen away from yourself. Well, here's a good solution. Put a mirror behind that and angle it so that you can see yourself, just so that you don't get out of the shot. You know, you might think, oh, this looks good, and then you find out that you were like here the entire time. Not so much good. So I want you to avoid doing that, and instead use a mirror, or I suppose you could use another camera with a flip screen, just to give you the composition of the shot, so that you can stay with a well-composed shot. And we'll talk about composition here in just a second. Finally, you can get free and excellent light 2 hours a day. Everyone all over the world, 2 hours a day, unless it's the part of the year where you're way in the northern hemisphere or way in the southern hemisphere and you have the constant dark twice a year. Other than that, within an hour of sunrise and within an hour of sunset is beautiful lighting outside. This is what's called the golden hour in photography or video production. So you can shoot during the golden hour. Now, you might need to stay up a little late or get up a little early, depending on how you're wired and how you do things, but you can get much better shots. I'm a little ashamed to say that I didn't do that today. I thought about it, but I didn't. And I'm leaving for a trip later on this afternoon, so I can't do it tonight. So I had to look for just the right spot that was perfectly shaded in order to get the shot that I did at the beginning of this video. But that's another tip, is you can absolutely just find the right shaded spot so that you're not blown out and the light doesn't look harsh, but so that it's more subtle and it's clear that you're outside and well lit and everything like that. Finally, sorry, I had to look underneath the phone to see what my last finally was. Let's say that it's very loud where you are. Let's say that you have a problem that you just can't get the kids to be quiet. There's a lot of noise, etc. in the house. There is a place where it tends to be quieter, and almost everyone has one, and that is the car. So you can actually take a little mini tripod, take your phone or take your DSLR or what have you into your car, set it up, and shoot your videos from your car. You might notice that some people actually post videos on YouTube that are shot in their cars, and you might think, oh, they're just busy. Well, that might be part of it, but it also might be the case that it's less them being busy and more that they're trying to get to a place where it's quiet. And the car is a quiet place to do this. Scott Eggleston of the Frugal Filmmaker channel on YouTube used to do this all the time. He would just answer questions once a week in his car. The downside is, in the winter it can get very cold, and more pressing, in the summer it can get very, very hot. So you might not want to do it at noon during summertime. Maybe later at night, but then you'll have to figure out some lighting. Maybe you'll have to park under a street lamp or something like that. But I just don't want you to injure yourself, so don't take video in a hot car. Also, don't take video while you're driving. I know I probably didn't need to say that because you're a smart person, but I just thought that I would mention it on the off chance you were thinking, well, Paul said use the car, and you just had other things on your mind or something. Okay, now let's talk about shot composition. This is kind of the third thing that I wanted to talk about today. You might notice that my eyes are about on the top third of my shot, depending on how I crop this and such. Now, I don't want you to be slavishly married to this, but I do want you to consider using the rule of thirds. You might have noticed on your smartphone that there is a set of guides that look like tic-tac-toe squares. The horizontal and vertical lines are at the top third and bottom third, and the horizontal lines are at the top third and the bottom third, and the vertical lines are at the left third and the right third. Well, what you would do is you put the most important thing in your shot along the top third. Now, in this case, it's my eyes. So that's why I've framed the shot the way that I have. Now, with that said, if I wasn't looking straight at the camera, again, trying to look at the camera, which is down there, as opposed to where I think it is, which is right here. If I wasn't looking at the camera, I could have a problem. So let me illustrate the problem that I could have. Yeah. So if I look like this, I am actually looking off screen, but I'm so close to the edge. Yeah, I'm so close to the edge that psychologically it makes you think, what's he looking at out there? Whereas if I moved back and I look like this, it's less annoying. So that rule is called nose room. There's a subservient rule to the rule of thirds called headroom, and that is talking about the amount of space above your head. That is how you help people know whether to tilt down or tilt up. Hey, I need a little more headroom, a little less headroom. You don't want to keep a constant amount of headroom no matter how far someone is from the shot. So you'll notice as I get closer, the amount of headroom in the shot decreases. And as I get farther away, the amount of headroom in the shot increases. That's fine. Remember, the rule of thirds is the primary rule that we're dealing with here. Now, as an aside, if you're shooting with more than one camera, you can seamlessly cut back and forth, and that's what I would recommend you do, is seamlessly cut. Transition should be simpler rather than more complex. The simplest one is the cut. The most complex stuff is like 3D cube spin and such. Don't use the 3D cube spin very much. Start out with as many cuts as you can use and an occasional cross dissolve or a fade to black, fade up from black. Those are your primary transitions. So if you're cutting between cameras, let's say that I was also using my daughter's iPhone here and I had it off to the side shooting me, that would be perfectly fine as long as the shot was 30% different in size or the angle was 30 degrees or more different. Just the instantaneous jump in that much is more than your brain can process, so most people will not be distracted by it. Next time you're watching television, notice the change. Notice how many cuts there are that you don't even notice, because that's just the way that it is. Your brain can't process instantaneous movement of that much. A little bit feels like a jump cut. If my hand stopped here, started here, and then immediately moved here with no motion in between, you would notice that. That's called a jump cut. But if you've got a change of more than 30%, your brain just can't quite notice that unless there's also a jump in movement. So you want to instantaneously cut between these things, leaving out or just making sure that they're different enough. So that's a little about composition. Now, I have gotten some questions this last week that I thought that I would answer for you. So the first thing is I got a question about streaming, and if my computer would let me, I think it's locked up on that particular thing. So he was asking, basically, he said that it was Josh C., who said, our church is looking to live stream services soon. Any suggestions? And I said, well, first off, take a look at my articles on churchproduction.com. That's the website for Church Production Magazine, one of the industry magazines in my niche, church video and technology. I write a monthly column on live streaming, so I've got some great tips, not just technical ones, but practical ones as well. In fact, this month, later on this afternoon, I'm going to start writing one on the legalities of showing people on video and how to make sure that everyone knows that they may be on video, and if they don't want to be on video, how to help them optimally place themselves so that that's not really an issue, things like that. So that's the kind of article that I deal with on a monthly basis. I also suggested him to use my streaming host, which you can find over at trinitydigitalmedia.com/church streaming. The church streaming, that's not my company, but it's who I use, and I've just been really pleased with them. And I also asked him to ask more questions, because more questions is better. Next, Praise-O asked me, I want to get a software for creating church video loops. How can I get a free version? And I'm going to assume that he didn't want me to show him piracy sites. I'm going to assume that he was looking for something similar to the paid software. So what I found is there's a website called alternative2.net, alternativeto.net, and you can search for specific software and then get other software that does basically the same thing. So if you wanted Photoshop, you'd search for Photoshop in alternative2.net, and then it would tell you about the GIMP Shop, and various other pieces of software that you can use for less money, for free, sometimes for more money, because you're just looking for alternatives. But what I told him to search for was Apple's Motion or Adobe After Effects. Either of those would do what he wants to do, and there was a good list of possible software that would be his solution. So if you've got a really low budget, that might be something to take a look at. Alternative2.net. Okay, next, Tom S. said, do you have any suggestions for a small portable video camera that could be outputted via USB to a laptop for an on-location live stream from a mission trip? So this is the camera I normally use on my shows. This is a Logitech C615, and you'll notice it has my friend the 1/4-20 thread on the bottom, so we can put that on a tripod, either a really low tripod on a desk like I normally do, or just a full-size tripod. So if he just wants to set it up in front of his youth group and say, hey everyone, look at this camera while we're talking to people, or etc., then that would be a good way to do it. I think he was actually asking, when I got some clarification, for a camcorder that did that, and there are some out there. But something else he could use if his camera has a Thunderbolt port is Blackmagic makes a device called the Blackmagic Recorder. I think it's something recorder. Anyway, I'm blanking on that. Mini recorder, the Blackmagic Mini Recorder. And you can plug that into a Thunderbolt port and then take the HDMI out of a DSLR or another camera, and you can use that to just to get the video out and into your computer. And I'm told it does great video. I haven't used it personally, but that's something on my to-try list. So there's really so much more that I could talk about, and I'm a little sad, quite frankly, that we're coming to an end of this series. I mean, I haven't even talked about editing, distribution, camera support, screencasting, 3-point lighting, DSLR video, how to do what I'm doing here, which this is a classic lens that doesn't have the electronics in it, but yet it works perfectly fine with my DSLR. That's something else we could talk about. There's just so much to talk about, and I'm really sorry that I don't have more time to do this, but these videos are taking a lot more time than what I normally spend. So I've been thinking about how much fun this is and trying to figure out how can I keep this going. So while there's so much that we could cover and I really just don't have time to consider it, I'd love to make something that's more interactive so that we could talk, at least some of us, on a weekly basis, and I could coach you guys through all this. Maybe something once a week, interactive, small class size. Not I mail it all out to everyone in my video email list. And quite frankly, this is just something that I was thinking about last night, and I put it in my notes so that I wouldn't forget to talk about it, but I don't have it all hashed out yet. So I'm thinking about doing something weekly, and if you're interested in that, absolutely make a comment below, and we'll talk about it. I want to get some feedback on what would be the best for everyone, although quite frankly I don't have space for everyone because I want it to be so interactive. I want to be like a video coach to everyone that needs this kind of thing, and I want to answer your questions, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes in a group. I want to get the questions, research where I need to research, lay them out in a way that makes sense, and then we can talk about this on a weekly basis for a month or 6 weeks or something, not too long, but something where we can really dive more in depth on the subject of using video. So, as I say, I don't know what that is exactly yet, but keep an eye on your email. If you haven't already subscribed to trinitydigitalmedia.com/vidcourse, VIDCOURSE, which I now wrote down in my notes here, so I know that's how I spelled it. You can subscribe to that and watch for an email from me about what's coming up, and we'll talk about that more. Don't forget to tweet about this video course using the hashtag VidCourse. Comment below the video, subscribe if you haven't, and just tell me what you'd like to learn about and how we can make something so that, well, I'm quite frankly very tired from creating 3 additional videos. This is my 8th video this week, by the way. Well, I'm quite tired from that and really can't keep it up. I think that there's maybe a way that we could do kind of a win-win where I can help you more in depth with something even more structured, and you can help me by helping me know what needs to be taught, as opposed to me just kind of thinking what I think you would like to know. Because I've been doing videos since 2000. I write columns in a couple of the major church video magazines. I've got the book, as I'm recording this, the book about how to do video is coming out next Tuesday, and it's got all kinds of tips and tricks and everything, and so I've got a lot up here that I want to share, but I really want it to be the most helpful to you. So keep your eye on your inbox, and I'll let you know when I get the details sorted out. I just want this to be something where we can bounce off each other, and I can really help you in what you need, not what I think you need. So keep your eyes on that, and until next time, just don't forget to comment below and tell me what you'd like. Until then, this is Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com.